and Hazon. So my name is Isaiah Rossi, and I serve as Rabbi in Residence for Hazon. Hazon is the Jewish lab for sustainability. Our work, we believe that we're in a global environmental crisis and that the Jewish tradition compels us to respond. We see sustainability, communal sustainability, personal sustainability, environmental sustainability as Jewish values. And we think it's important for us to think critically about our ecosystems in general, the choices we make and how those choices influence and have consequences, and specifically recognizing food systems as an important medium for how we might address and mitigate climate change. And so that's just a little bit about me and the work that we do. And again, hopefully we'll hear a little bit more about some of the things that we might be able to do together and collaborate via Hazon at the end. But for now, just to introduce myself, and again, to say that I'm really excited to be here again with my colleagues on this call, and also shout outs to Liana and Becky, who are also colleagues of mine from Hazon. And I'll hand it over to Melissa to introduce herself.
Thank you, Rabbi Isaiah, and thanks everyone for being here. It's been extraordinary weeks. I hope everyone is staying safe and well. My name is Melissa Hoffman. I direct JIFA, or the Jewish Initiative for Animals. We support Jewish institutions in adopting more humane and sustainable food practices, helping communities align their food choices with their Jewish values. This emanates from a concern for the intersecting issues of climate change, environmental preservation, concern for animal welfare and workers. And we do this work through educational programs, supply chain work, and direct free consultation. I'll also talk a little bit more about ways that you can take advantage of our resources and get involved later in the session. So I know I've lost most sense of time over the past few days, as maybe you have, but I found these, as Isaiah said, these opportunities to have these virtual experiences to be at least a welcome distraction, and at best a really grounding way to get rerouted in humanity and Judaism in our calendrical cycle, and perhaps more now than ever. It's so apparent to me that when our world is shaken, how much it creates this longing for the outdoors, for that centering of being outside and being connected to the rest of life on earth, and that sense of comfort that that gives us. And so I can't think of a better Jewish frame for that connection and that biophilia that exists for many of us than the learning and the new resource that Rabbi Ellen is going to introduce to us today. I should say that as we all figure out how we'll be marking the holiday, I know that's up in the air for many of us, I hope this conversation anchors us back to the calendar and sparks a renewed excitement for Pesach. I connected with Rabbi Ellen last year at a Jewish education conference, and when we reconnected and I had a chance to hear her speak, I was really struck by the beauty and scholarly rigor and relevance of this content. And she interweaves Torah and contemporary questions that are very real for us today so beautifully into our Haggadah. So we're going to go until about 10 a.m. Pacific or 1 p.m. Eastern. There will be opportunities for questions and discussion, and we'll be offering some practical resources for putting these ecological considerations into practice as part of your Seder planning and food choices during Passover. Without further ado, Rabbi Ellen Bernstein grew up in an assimilated Jewish family, exploring the woods, ponds, and mountains of New England. From an early age, she was worried that we were ruining the natural world with pollution by exploiting its resources. She graduated from one of the first environmental studies programs at UC Berkeley in 1975, and she always understood the environmental crisis as a spiritual crisis, a crisis in values. She discovered meaning in Judaism after college when studying the Parsha of the week with a friend, and was amazed to find that Torah contained so much ecological wisdom. She searched for many years to discover a Jewish environmental organization, but finding none, she founded Shomrei Adama, Keepers of the Earth, the first national Jewish environmental organization in 1988. She has authored many articles and several books on Judaism and ecology, including The Splendor of Creation, and most recently, The Promise of the Land, a Passover Haggadah. And I'm so grateful that we're here together with Rabbi Ellen.
So thanks, and hi everybody. Thank you so much to Isaiah and Melissa for putting this together with me, and all the other Hazon folks and everyone on this call. And as I said to some of the folks earlier, it's great if, as I'm speaking, especially in the first part, if you indicate through nods or whatever that you know that you're following along with me, would be really helpful. What I am going to do is talk a little bit about the background of my new Passover Haggadah. Hopefully, some of the folks in the room have the Haggadah. So I'm going to spend the first 10 minutes or so talking about how I came to write this Haggadah, and the sort of the ecological foundations of this Haggadah. And then I'll be going through for about 15 minutes after that. I'll share the Haggadah on the screen and go through different parts of it. I also want to say, just in terms of what Melissa was talking about being connected these days and how important it is to do that. So I've been working with, and I'll talk more about this at the end, but I just wanted to get this in right away too. I've been working with a group of folks who are going to be leading Earth Seders based on this Haggadah. There's about 30 people around the country who were planning on hosting community-wide Seders in their community up until the coronavirus hit. And now we're trying to work out how to do the Earth Seders online, remotely, so people from all over can join in. So, and I'll talk more about that later. Okay, so just a little bit in terms of my own journey. So I founded the first Jewish environmental organization in 1988. And in the old days, those early days, well, actually probably for 10 years, a lot of us spent time searching through Jewish texts and the Bible and looking for kind of those ecological gems, of which there are many. We, lots of us did that for a while, and I wrote several books. And after about 10 years of that, I started feeling like, for me, as someone who's also scholarly oriented and very text oriented, I felt like I intuited that there had to be like an ecological through line throughout the Bible, grounding all this ecological wisdom. But I wasn't, it was an intuition, and I wasn't really clear about what that might be, what might be the ecological through line through the Bible. And as a young person, when I was in college, I had studied Aldo Leopold, who's a eco-philosopher, and he's considered by many kind of the first environmental philosopher. He's from Wisconsin, studied at Yale Forestry School, and he was writing in the 40s and 50s. And he came up with this whole idea of a land ethic. Basically what he said was that the Bible, he wasn't like really a religious person, but he talked about how the Bible gives us an ethic for how to relate to each other, and it gives us an ethic for how to relate in community and how to relate to God, but we don't have an ethic for how to treat the land. And the way he defined land was that he basically expanded the whole notion of community to include land. So for him, again, writing in the 40s, land was really an ecosystem. Land was soil and water and air, and animals and microorganisms and us. So he thought about land really in three-dimensional terms. And, you know, most folks, in my experience, is that they think about land really in two-dimensional terms, kind of as something flat and inert and kind of meaningless. And I started thinking, what if I looked at Torah from this perspective of land as organism, land as a living organism? Maybe that would sort of shed some light for me on this whole question of, is there a through line in Torah that has to do with ecological concerns? So the first thing I did was I did a word search and found that the word eretz, which means both land and earth, occurs over 2,000 times in Torah. And that really just got me going. Just started thinking, okay, I've got to take this seriously. It's really worth thinking about. So I also want to say that I will get to the Haggadah, but as many of you know, that Torah really is the background for the Haggadah. So I have to get that to you first. So I spent a whole year teaching and reading all the passages about land in Torah and teaching a class on it. And at the end of that process, Berman House, the Jewish press, came to me. Well, actually, I wrote a scholarly article that got published, and it was called A Response to Aldo Leopold, A Biblical Land Ethic. And at the end of that whole, like, 2 or 3 or 4 year period, Berman House came to me and said, would you do a Passover Haggadah from an ecological perspective for us? This is now almost 3 years ago. And my first response was, I don't know if I can really do that, because as we all know, the primary theme of Passover is freedom, the freedom of the Jewish people. And in order for me to write a real Passover Haggadah that follows all the traditional steps and maintains the traditional ideas of the Haggadah, I would need to connect the concept of freedom and human freedom to the earth. So that was my challenge in writing the Haggadah. And basically, it took me a little while to remember that through all this research I had done, I remembered that originally in the Mishnah, when it gives us the instructions for how to celebrate Passover, what it says is that there's very few things we're supposed to do. We're supposed to drink 4 cups of wine. We're supposed to say some blessings. We're supposed to talk about these 3 foods, the matzah, maror, and the shank bone. And we're supposed to read a passage from the Bible. And what it says in the Mishnah is that we're supposed to read this passage in its entirety, the whole passage. And the way they describe the passage is the passage that starts with the words, "My father was a wandering Aramaean." So the thing is, though, that let me just say what this passage is in general, because some of you will find it familiar. It's, "My father was a wandering Aramaean. Our ancestors went down to Egypt. We were miserable there. We were oppressed. We cried out to God, and God saved us." And that's the passage that we normally see in most Orthodox or conservative Haggadot today. But you don't really see that passage clearly because it's divided up. It's subdivided into these little phrases, and there's a midrash about it, about each phrase. It's very complicated, and a lot of people just overlook this passage entirely. But the real thing is that when the Haggadah was actually written down, the rabbis did not include the full passage as they were told to do, as was described in the Mishnah. Okay, so the Mishnah says include the entire passage, and the rabbis only included the passage as far as I gave it to you. So what they included was, my father was a wandering Aramean. We went down to Egypt. We were oppressed. We cried out to God, and God saved us. And that's where the rabbis, that's what the part that they put in the Haggadah. But the passage continues, and I'll give you a land, and you'll bring back the first fruits of that land to me. And so those are the two lines. I'll give you a land, you'll bring back the first fruits of that land to me. Those two lines were not included. Now, for me, the way that I read Torah, ecologically understanding the cycles of life, I understand this to mean, well, first of all, that the whole reason that we were taken out of Egypt was so that we would be given a land, and in return, we'd bring back the first fruits of that land back to God to continue the cycle going. Okay, so God brings to us, we bring back to God and the land, and there's this ongoing, we live in this ongoing cycle of reciprocity. So for me, that's a profoundly ecological statement, and that's how I understand Torah. But those lines were never included. I'm not going to talk about why here. We don't have enough time, but there's a lot of information on my website, and we can refer you to that later. So what? So once I understood this piece, that these two lines were missing, and that with these two lines, I could really understand the entire sort of central message of the Haggadah as ecological. What if I restored those two lines about being given a land, and that what freedom means is that we have a land, we have agency, not ownership of the land, but we have a relationship with the land, and it's our responsibility to bring back the fruits to God, however we understand God, and to bring it back to the land, and that we're in this cycle of reciprocity. So once I understood that, I felt comfortable shaping a Haggadah with that perspective in mind. So before I start showing you the pictures and the different passages from the Haggadah, does anyone have any questions they want to ask? Are we doing okay so far? Yeah? Okay. No questions down there. Okay. So can you just indicate with a thumbs up or down, who has a Haggadah in front of them? Becky? Okay, just a couple of you. No, okay, down. Okay, all right, so I'm going to share on the screen the Haggadah right now, okay? Let's see what happened to it. Oops. 1 second. Can you see this? I don't know if anyone has any, Oh, okay, here we go. Can folks see this? Melissa, Isaiah, can you see?
Yes.
Yes, but it's not big enough, right?
It's a little small. I think if we're able to zoom in without losing quality, we'll be good.
That's better.
Yeah.
We okay? Yes or no?
Yes.
I think so. Everybody can see?
Okay, great.
Great.
Okay, so so this is the Haggadah. It's illustrated by Galia Goodman. And I'm just going to go through and show bits and pieces of it. And first of all, I'm not going to discuss this, but just to let you know, there's a whole section in the back about how to create an ecologically sound and beautiful Seder. So there's all kinds of information on the back, like 5 pages, that talk about ecological purchasing and setting up a beautiful Seder in your home. So again, just to orient you, this Seder is relatively traditional. I go through all the steps. The Berman House is a Reform press, and so another challenge for me was how to make this as traditional as I could and still reach a Reform and unaffiliated audience. So so this is kind of the entry page, the 5 steps, which I loved Isaiah's singing, and I'm going to ask you to make a clip of that for me, Isaiah. We'll be sharing lots of clips of different parts of the Haggadah online for people for their own Seders. So I'm going to move, so we have Kadesh or Chatz, and I want to move into Karpas. Does somebody have a question there? Oh, okay. I can't tell. All right. Okay, so just in Karpas, actually, Melissa, would you mind reading the first paragraph? Melissa?
Yes, first paragraph or first side paragraph?
First paragraph. Karpas refers to all the green vegetables.
Karpas refers to all the green vegetables, the parsley, arugula, or other greens on the table that sprout from the soil. It symbolizes the vibrant, verdant energy of spring, of life's urge to break through the dry earth. It reminds us that the freedom to just be, to express one's inner nature is the most essential freedom.
Great. And I just want to, so the part in the black here is all the contextualization. And then what's in the green are the traditional parts of the Seder. If you want to cut back, you obviously can, but you know here what the traditional part is because it's in green. And then all of the instructions of what to do are in this earth tone color here. Dip a green vegetable in salt. And then all of the material on the sidebars, these are little tidbits that you can include, or if you're holding the Seder in your home, and you can ask people at your table, tell them to begin with that there's all these little nuggets on the side, and people can insert something that they find interesting at any point. Because as we know, a Seder is all about interruptions and asking questions. And so it's fine for the Seder to be somewhat ruckus. Okay, so I just want to talk about a couple of these. There on almost every page, there's some kind of question or talk about it for a discussion. And there's one here at the bottom of this page. Isaiah, can you read this, the talk about it right here? You're muted.
Yes. When eating plant foods, we are required to recite a special blessing, but no such blessing is required for meat. Why do you think this is so?
Great. So all of the questions could, when I offered this question in a session I was teaching of all age people, I couldn't believe the kids were just waving their hands wildly and just, they wanted to spend the whole time just talking about this question. So there's lots of opportunities for engaging kids with the questions and also with the art, and just like, what does this make you feel like when you look at this, all this green, right? Okay, the next section is Yachatz. And again, to me, right now in our world, this part is extremely moving. So, because just in terms of coronavirus and answering some of the issues that are going on right this minute. So, so can somebody else from the group read? I don't know all of your names, but.
I'm happy to read.
Go ahead, please.
We'll read the first 3 paragraphs here.
Yeah, actually, just start with matzah is the simplest of all food.
Matzah is the simplest of all foods, wheat and water. humble pie. It is parched, dry, and unassuming like the desert. When we consider matzah relative to bread, one of its meanings becomes clear. Bread is the puffed up version of wheat, far removed from the flour and the earth from which it comes. In the context of Passover, bread symbolizes the additives and the excesses that weigh us down and enslave us. Matzah reminds us of what bread would like us to forget.
Next paragraph, Becky.
Passover is the path back to basics, the earth, the wheat, and water, and our essential selves. Passover teaches that freedom comes when we rid ourselves of the burden of too much. For now, we simply admire the matzah and reflect on it, the root food of our peoplehood.
Great. Now, we have two really, to me, important questions that could be talked about here. One is this sidebar. If matzah teaches simplicity, what foods might we want to enjoy during Passover? If matzah suggests that we enslave ourselves to the excesses of our culture, what excesses or additives might we want to avoid during Passover? And again, you know, when I teach this, the first thing that comes to mind for so many people with the excesses is how, you know, now you can buy any kind of food that you want that's kosher for Passover. You know, you can buy cake mixes and all kinds of different things that have all these additives. Whereas the whole point of Passover is to get us back into a frame of simplicity and what really matters. And today, you know, there's nothing more poignant than this question. Actually, the next question is pretty poignant too. Let's just look at this as well. Can someone else read the broken matzah here? Can someone jump in and read?
I'll do it, Kathy. The broken matzah is symbolic of our brokenness and the brokenness of the world. Some of us have broken with the past. We may have lost a sense of history and a connection to our ancestors. Others may feel broken or detached from our earthy home. We may have lost touch with the natural world and all that it gives us freely each day. The whole matzah represents, sorry.
Go ahead.
The whole matzah represents wholeness and freedom. It is the food of liberation that the Israelites ate as they hurried out of Egypt. It helps us to retrieve lost parts of ourselves so we may become whole again.
So, you know, it's interesting because I put together, Hillel wanted me to take the Haggadah and then just write an outline for them of the most, like, for a 45-minute Seder, okay? And I just did this teaching with them yesterday, but I had written my outline 2 weeks ago, and I didn't include this last section that was just read, nor did I originally, I didn't include this, talk about it as like the most important things to be thinking about. And right now, this is like, to me, like an incredibly important question to be asking. Are there ways you feel broken or disconnected? How might you help heal the brokenness? So today, you know, it just feels incredibly important to allow people, to give people the space to also talk about this. And I just want to point out this sidebar here. The game of hide the matzah is not just child's play. It is emblematic of the central story of the evening, retrieving that which has been broken. So, and that, you know, the kids find the matzah, they come back and they put the pieces of the matzah together. So there's this whole sense of being broken in the beginning, and then by the end of the Seder, achieving a state of wholeness. Okay. So let's see. So then we move into the Magid section, and I'm just going to, basically what I want to do is I'm just going to sort of highlight some of the things throughout that feel like really important conversations to me. So this sidebar here, right? Magid, it comes, is the Hebrew for telling. It's about, we're sort of getting into telling the story now. And this talk about it here is, can telling a story set you free? Can telling a story hinder your sense of freedom? Can language change you? And again, for me, these are really important questions. You know, when we come to the Rasha, what's, you know, traditionally called the wicked child, you know, for that child, maybe the narrative has been a turnoff for them. Maybe the telling of the story has made them feel imprisoned. So, as we know, lots of people have had a hard time with the Passover Haggadah in the past. So it's a wonderful opportunity to allow people to express frustrations of past experiences, whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to point that out. And then we go into the 4 questions.
Rabbi Ellen, we have a few questions popping up in chat. I don't know if you want to take a short Q&A break or keep going for a minute.
I could. Let's see. How do I find them? How come I'm not seeing them? Can you help me figure out where to
if you click on the chat at the bottom center of the screen, you should be able to see it on the right side.
Oh, maybe it's because do you think it's because of...
If you're sharing your screen, it might actually be at the top.
Okay.
So if you like move your...
Thanks, Alana.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
So we had a question from Moshe about the brachot. Is there an answer for why vegetables get their own category of blessing, whereas meat and water, et cetera, are all in the same category? And comment on that. Right.
So hang on one second. Okay. Oh, but can I just ask you? Oh, okay. For me, these are open questions as opposed to questions with specific answers. And what was really great when I did this before was just how all of these kids had all these different thoughts about it. So I don't know that there's one specific answer. I mean, somebody else might know that, but I do not know that. Shall I look at these other? Okay.
And then we had a comment from Andrea. When I think of the brokenness, I think of separations created by the opioid crisis, of separations of members of the LGBT community. And we had a question from Gila. Relating to yachatz and brokenness, are there traditions that you know which connect this with the broken tablets? In this context, could indicate our broken covenant with the earth?
Yeah, these are great comments. And actually, some people who are using the Haggadah have already started working on a super commentary on top of it, and those are wonderful comments. Right. So, yeah, I mean, to me, what I love about doing Torah is just the associations that come up for people and how exciting that is. And maybe in a next round of this, maybe people will send me their comments and I can either include them in an appendix or share them online. So I welcome you to send me all of your comments. But that's very helpful. Okay, let's just for a time check, Melissa and Isaiah, should I go for 5 more minutes or 10 minutes? Tell me. And then we'll do the announcements.
Yeah, maybe let's go for 5 more minutes and then take some more questions.
Okay. So what I want to do actually is show you. So this is the 4 children. I mean, I could talk about this because there's some cool stuff in here, but let me just show you one thing here. I can't see this because I really like this question after the 4 children. This is like where we have the the wicked child, supposedly. So why do you, although I don't use that language, but why do you think the Haggadah models a family with 4 siblings whose characteristics do not appear entirely positive? And for me, this is a really very interesting way to approach the Haggadah, as opposed, like a lot of people get very upset that even a wicked child is mentioned, that could even be thought about in the Haggadah. But like, you know, to me, our ancestors had reasons for doing what they were doing. And I think it'd be interesting just to consider why they would have developed a family system that looked like that. Anyway, that's not particularly ecological, but I like that question. All right, so then we talked about physical slavery, and this is spiritual slavery. I love this reading here written by Ben Weiner. Can someone read this out loud? It's really quite moving. In the purple, the traditional Haggadah.
The traditional Haggadah draws a sharp distinction between oppressor and oppressed, the Egyptian overlord and the Israelite slave. While our world is plagued by such stark imbalances of power, I find myself preoccupied with the way that our society locks us. Locks us? It's beneficiaries. Does it say locks?
Yeah.
Okay. It's beneficiaries into oppressive roles. Oh, all right. I see. My daily routine is sustained by the ceaseless extraction and burning of fossil fuels. When I take stock of this, I want to cry out to God, not as an enslaved Israelite, but as an Egyptian sickened by the destructive power entangled in my hands. Going back to the land, learning to grow a large portion of my family's food with regenerative techniques, drawing sustenance from the parcel of earth where we make our home, while also doing my best to restore it as habitat to birds and bees, bears, and butterflies, has felt in this regard like liberation. Rabbi
Great.
Benjamin Weiner.
Thank you. Okay, so then we get to, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about, my father was a wandering Aramaean, again, just to show you how I handled it. And then we'll move to the other part of this session. So this is the section that was the primary central part of the Haggadah according to the Mishnah. And as you see here, these are the 4 lines that are traditionally in any Haggadah, and these are the 2 that I brought back. And usually what happens in a traditional Haggadah is these lines appear and there's a midrash around each of these lines. And the midrash is very difficult to understand. And what I did was I took these lines and I put them back in their biblical context, and also offered a very ecological reading of the biblical story. So again, I'm not going to spend time with this, but I want to show you. So these are all the lines. Oh, these are the plagues. I should talk about this, but I don't know we'll have time. And then what I did here is, this is one of the lines that I brought back. So actually, Isaiah, could you read this, please? This is start with the Adonai in the English.
Yeah, strangely, I'm having trouble finding it on my screen. Does that make sense?
Melissa, can you read?
Do you see it? I don't see
Is there
it.
a problem?
The Adonai
Yes.
brought us to
Yes.
this place and gave us this land, a land flowing with milk and
Oh,
honey.
there it is.
Want to go ahead?
No, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
Getting out of Egypt was not the hardest part. We would spend 40 years wandering in the wilderness before we could receive a land where we could set roots, grow our own food, and finally be free. It would take all that time to heal from the condition of slavery that we inherited in Egypt. In Egypt, Pharaoh owned and exploited the land and everything in it, the fruit trees, the animals, the gold deposits, and us. In Pharaoh's ownership economy, people and creatures were commodities to be bought and sold. If we were going to inherit a land, we would need to honor the dignity of all people, all creatures, and the land. God freed the Israelites not just for our sake, but for the sake of the entire creation. The land and its creatures belong to God.
Keep reading, please. We could not own the land.
I see. We could not own the land because the land has a life of its own. We were to treat the land as a commons, which everyone could share and enjoy together, just as we all share the air. We were to see ourselves as God's tenants, guests on the land. The hardest lesson for us to learn was that the land could not be guaranteed. If we neglected the land's need for rest every 7th year, if we forgot the Sabbath, if we avoided giving to the poor or hoarded the land or its produce, our behaviors would reverberate in the land, and one day the land might be unable to endure our indifference any longer. The land may have no recourse but to spew us out. If we wanted to dwell freely in the land for generations, we would have to know what farmers have always known, that caring for land is a matter of life and death. It requires dedication, perseverance, and love.
Great. Okay. And then there are some like really, to me, wonderful sidebars here that you may want to explore. If you see this, talk about it over here. Can you be free without a connection to land? Again, what we're exploring in the Passover Haggadah is what freedom means, right? How might slavery be connected to landlessness? And then I have this quote by Malcolm X up here: land is the basis of all independence. Land is the basis of freedom, justice, and equality. And I just want to show you this one. The promised land is the land where you belong. Like a beshert marriage, a marriage that is meant to be, it is a reciprocal relationship. And also this other quote down here: farmed properly in traditional ways, the land itself is one of our best defenses against the threat of climate change. So, and you can see the rest: building topsoil, adding organic materials, minimizing soil disturbances, etc. Could over time increase soil carbon. So there's all different kinds of sidebars to choose from the kind of scientific and ecological to the more spiritual to the more secular. So it's, you know, the hope was to be able to serve lots of populations, for everybody that's around your table or at your Seder to have something to chew on. Okay, so it's 12:48. Should I do one more, or should we turn the conversation back to you guys?
I think let's maybe wrap it here, and if people want to offer additional questions before we wrap up for the last few minutes. We had some really nice comments from Robert about, you know, what does it mean that one of our ancestors, that Joseph contributed, you know, kind of helped set up a framework for what became an exploitative situation.
So can I just quickly respond to that? Yeah. That's totally there. That's what we read in my in this story here, is what Joseph did, and it offers us, through the reading of the story, opportunities to discuss this as well. So thank you for bringing that out. Here's like right here: by centralizing the management of the land and the food distribution system, Joseph helped strengthen Pharaoh's control over the land and its inhabitants. So there's definitely those. I didn't shy away from bringing that kind of stuff up. Okay, go ahead, Melissa. Sorry.
Great. And then, and also mentioned that what comes to mind is the dispossession of First Nations from their land and the importance of a restored land base to healing around colonialism.
Such a good point.
And Andrea also offered that Nahisi Coates, in his new book, The Water Dancer, has great discussion between slavery and land.
Great.
Are there any other last questions or comments that people would like to just jump in and vocalize?
Hi, it's Becky here. I'll just say, Ellen, I really, really hope that these online Seders happen. I've been really looking forward to diving into this at Seder this year, and I'm not sure that I'll be hosting or attending any. And I'm wondering about warmer climates where people could be having outside Seders and everybody sitting 5-6 feet apart out in the park and having an outdoor Seder sitting right on the land, and what potential there is for connecting in that way. And I'll also say I'm so struck by how different this whole Haggadah looks to me right now. I read through this several weeks ago, and now within the coronavirus, I'm like, everything looks very different and whole other new layers in here that honestly make it that much richer and deeper and profound. So I don't know if other people are having that experience, or for you, Ellen, yourself, you're kind of experiencing it all differently right now, having been the person who created it and has been most deeply on the inside of it.
Yeah. I just want to say, really great ideas, Becky. I think the idea of hosting outside is actually, I'm pretty sure at least one of the Earth Seder people is thinking of doing that, and not in a warmer climate, in Vermont. It's going to be the first week in April, and people can come in their jackets and sit 6 feet apart. So I will be posting all about these different options. There is an Earth Seder Facebook page, and my website, www.thepromiseoftheland.com. There's an Earth Seder page. And yes, Becky, there's at least, like, I'm working with about 30 people who are thinking about these Seders. I know for sure that there's going to be at least 3 or 4 of them that are going to be, that, you know, anyone can come to. And it's, you know, and I welcome you actually to help me thinking about strategic things and details. So thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Ellen, is it all right if we move into just a word about additional resources from JIFA and Hazon?
Sure.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen now. Let's see if I can make that happen. Ellen, I think I'll need you to end your share first.
Okay, got it.
Thank you.
And by the way, we are sending a follow-up email to folks with links and all of that kind of good stuff. And I do want to just say, as Melissa's getting ready, I welcome everybody to be in touch with me with your ideas, any comments that you have on the Hagaddah that I might share in the future.
Does everyone see that slide?
No. It's black.
Anything now?
No.
Okay.
Do you want me to try to share it, Melissa?
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm sending that couple of slides to you, if you're able to open them.
Awesome.
Is it a PowerPoint keynote?
It's a Google slide.
Great. I'm here.
I just want to say, Karen Moskowitz, I thought you were actually live and sharing this really happy face the whole time. And I just realized it. But anyway, it was nice to see this happy face out there.
Okay, wonderful. Someone's technology is working. And we can go to that next slide. Wonderful. So when I was at Ellen's talk here in Los Angeles, someone asked at the end and during the Q&A, like, what can we do? We're not farmers. We don't necessarily touch the land or interact with it much on a daily basis. Like, how can our choices around the planning of the Seder and integrating all of these ecological messages into our own planning happen. And I hope that one thing that Hazon and JIFA can offer to you in your preparation process is some additional resources. Ellen mentioned that at the back of the Haggadah, there's some really great guidance and tips around integrating this practically into your Seder. Additionally, as I mentioned, JIFA is an organization that helps institutions and events and just people on an individual level align their choices with their values. And so we've produced a couple of Haggadah supplements to help you prepare and deepen the learning around conscious food choices during Passover and really year round. We also have ways for you to engage in commitments that help your communities or help your institutions make these lasting commitments so that they indeed do make a significant and lasting impact. So you can check out our flagship program, the Jewish Leadership Circle, and receive free consultation for your institution to adopt these more sustainable and humane food practices. And we hope you check out our resources in our resource hub on jewishinitiativeforanimals.org. We have resources for B'nai Mitzvah, text study, and more. And we'll be sending out a follow-up after this webinar with our contact information, et cetera, and just ways for you to continue to get involved and stay in touch with us. And I'll turn it over to Isaiah to talk more about Hazon and its offerings.
Thank you, Melissa. And also thank you, Rabbi Ellen. Rabbi Ellen, really so special to hear from you. This was the first presentation I think I've heard about your Haggadah specifically. And I think relating to the work of Hazon, we deeply care very much about how we fuse our Jewish tradition into discussing ethos and issues around climate justice and sensitizing ourselves to the land, and specifically using Torah and the Jewish tradition as a media is very much at the spine of what Hazon is doing. And so we just appreciate what you've offered here today, but then also really for all your offerings that you've been bringing to the Jewish community and then the Jewish environmental world throughout the decades. So for real. And also again, to be partner with JIFA on our second webinar together this month. We had also Alana just was also out with us on a different webinar a few weeks back with Jewish Veg and Shemayim. And so it's just special that we get to learn Torah, consider these topics. And specifically for Hazon and the resources that we might be able to offer, if you check out our Hazon resources for Pesach that you can find on our website. It has recipes on how to build sustainable Seders, just, thinking about Passover this particular year, we also will be sending out resources specifically around Earth Day and Passover, as well as how we respond to Passover during this particular trying time. And then specifically just how you think about choices, which I think so much of what this Haggadah is bringing up, and what I also think, as Melissa mentioned about the supplements, really thinking about how we are engaging in healthier and more sustainable choices daily. And I think that all of us are holding in different places of how we approach our relationship to the earth and the choices we make and the consequences for our choices. But I think that really we see ourselves as engaging in environmental tshuva all year around, not just necessarily a campaign that Hazon launched for Rosh Hashanah this year, but really all year around to be considering our choices. And then specifically, and I'm glad to have Becky O'Brien on this call. Becky, do you want to say a little bit about We Are the Weather and also the Hazon discussion guide for We Are the Weather?
I can just quickly say, if you're in the market for more learning around online learning, Hazon will shortly be putting out information about, we're going to be doing webinars on Jonathan Safran Foer's book, We Are the Weather, Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast. And so if you're interested in more learning in this type of format, we'll be offering those. And the book, We Are the Weather, is about how our food choices affect climate change. And And one of the big points he makes in the book that ties right into this Hagaddah is that our planet is a farm, and we've been thinking about the climate change crisis, and have been thinking about our planet in terms of a factory. And when we think of it in terms of a factory, we're really missing the point in not connecting to what's going to really fix this for us, and needing to understand that our planet is a farm, and reconnecting with the land and understanding in that way. So if you're interested in this Hagaddah, I think you'll find the themes in We Are the Weather very relevant as well. So the first one will be on April 1st, and we'll be offering 3, and they're all the same one, and you'll just pick the one that works for you. So you can look for that in upcoming Hazon emails. Thank you.
Nice. Thank you, Becky. And then the last thing I'll just share, Hazon related around announcements, is to just say, specifically my work is very much involved in stewarding relationships with rabbis and spiritual leaders, and then working with our different community programs, including, the Seal of Sustainability. And so ultimately, I would love to connect with you more about our Rabbinical Council, our Rabbinic Advisory Board, and then other rabbinic offerings we might be able to offer you, and then also just ways in which we could work with your clergy or people you're adjacent to that might be clergy, and how we might be able to bring these ethos more into your community. So feel free to let me know. Feel free to reach out to Becky if you have anything specific on what she mentioned. And I think that's us for announcements.
Can I offer just a couple other little things real
Please.
quick? I just want to, just in terms of what Melissa was saying, I just want to say that in the Haggadah, in the Haggadah, there are 2 options for making commitments. One is, and actually doing something specific. One is with the Afikomen about giving a prize, which is like membership in an environmental organization, or offering a plant or something like that for the Afikomen prize. And then also during the cups, the Elijah's cups, where we're thinking about the future, that's a time for people to go around the table, talk about how they're moved by the Seder, what they want to do, where they want to take it from here. So that I just wanted to say that. And then my last just request is that there is an Earth Seder Facebook page. I would be delighted if folks would go on and like it and visit now and then, so to see what's new. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ellen, for teaching us and for this amazing new resource. I'm looking forward to using it. I'm looking forward to using it next year as well, hopefully with a larger crowd. And I think it's such a gift to those of us for whom those ties to the earth and those connections between Judaism and the well-being of the rest of the world is so important and integral to any holiday that we celebrate. So thank you to Hazon and to Rabbi Ellen and to all of you for being here. And please stay well and safe. And as I said, we'll be sending a follow-up email with resources and supplements to look out for.